I watched one of our cats being pulled backwards about 5 feet by her tail. She was walking through the dining area and suddenly was sliding backwards, as if someone was pulling her by her tail. Only there wasn't. She freaked out and tried to run, but couldn't immediately as something held on for a brief second before letting her go. I tend to think that was the handiwork of a 4 or 5-year-old girl ghost who hangs out and she just wanted to play with the kitty. One night when I was about 12, I was drifting off to sleep. Then I clearly heard a baby laugh for 1 to 2 seconds. Presumed it was just my imagination and went to sleep. The next morning, my sister mentioned that she'd been woken up by the sound of a baby crying. I don't really believe in ghosts, but I've never been able to explain that. I lived in a house for about 5 years that was haunted, but not in a malicious way. In a shitty roommate kind of way. I'd come home to the windows on the second floor being open when it was raining, to food containers being open in the fridge that I hadn't touched yet. The worst was that the ghost hated clocks. She hated them. I had antique cuckoo clocks that had worked for 50 years that would just stop. Brand new wall clocks that ate through batteries like it was candy. My watch ended up on the floor one morning. The crystal shattered, even though I knew I slept with it on. The one that pissed me off the most was that I got a brand new Kit Kat clock for Christmas, and the bitch threw it off the wall. I was cooking and out of corner of my eye saw the cat freaking fly. Turned around and it was across the kitchen. Broken. It was brand new. My son, about 4 years old at the time, would jabber away in his room by himself. One day, my wife asked him who he was talking to. He said he was talking with Alice and that she used to feed the men who lived here. He went on to say that she died because she couldn't breathe. Our house used to be a boarding house before World War II. My sister and then 4-year-old niece moved into a townhouse apartment complex. Niece is 14 now and still remembers this vividly. Ran into my sister's room not long after screaming about the man in her room yelling at her. My sister jumps out of bed and searches around for anyone or anything out of place. Finds nothing. Doors and windows still locked. Happens a couple more times over the next few nights. Niece doesn't want to sleep there. Won't go into her room, etc. So my sister is chatting with one of the other moms at the complex playground one day, and the other lady mentions how creepy that is considering the guy that overdosed in that apartment a few years back. Apparently his son's room was now my niece's room. So my mom does some digging and found the guy's name, which led to his obituary. Pulled up the picture from the obituary and called my niece into the computer room. She got half a step into the room when she saw the photo on the monitor and ran out screaming about the man. Have absolutely no explanation as to how she recognized this guy's picture. So my husband and I rented a really old house. We had to fix it up a bit before my son came home from the hospital. He was very premature. In NICU for almost 5 months. We took down the wallpaper and painted, took down the popcorn ceiling, the whole 9 yards. The basement was very unfinished and vandalized by the teenagers that lived there before. Swastikas everywhere. We didn't bother finishing it because we didn't really need the room. I went down there once out of the year we lived there. Creepy feeling. Like someone was watching you, pissed. Sometimes that creepy feeling would come upstairs. I would give it a week or so thinking it was in my head, and then I would sit in the car with the baby while my husband burned sage to clear it out. He says the feeling while he did so was heavy, very angry, and he would see figures coming at him through the smoke. There were countless experiences there. The 2 that stick out in my head are as followed. I was showering, and the baby was in a little bouncer seat in the doorway. I open the curtain, and just as I do, the can of air freshener that was sitting on the back of my toilet goes flying towards my baby. If the door wasn't just slightly shut, it would have nailed him. I went full-on batshit crazy. I started yelling, telling them if they are going to mess with anyone, mess with me. He is just a baby, blah, 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 blah. As I'm doing so, the detachable shower head I had went flying off at me, hit the end of his rope and swings down. Shut me right up. My husband and I were in bed. My son in his room right down the very small hallway, fast asleep. We had a baby monitor because he was on oxygen and therefore on a pulse ox monitor, so I wanted to be able to hear his alarm go off. So my husband and I were laying in bed together. We usually will talk for a while and then say our good nights and fall asleep. We say our good nights this particular night, and not even 5 minutes later we both hear, clear as day, a little girl laughing in the baby monitor. My husband jumped up out of bed ready to kick some ass. But I already knew no one was there. I was stunned. Literally. Couldn't move until finally I fell asleep. I do not miss that place. Hearing lots of things, screams in the basement. a child and older man laughing when I'm in the shower, furniture being dragged around on my porch, music playing randomly with glasses clinking and groups of people chatting. I've had lights turn on when I leave the house briefly. This happened for years. I've had important documents go missing over the weekend, and then when I walk back into the room to search for them for the third time, they are all neatly arranged in a stack on the center of the table. All my cabinets would be open when I got home. I would feel what felt like people sitting on my bed at night and then getting up shortly after. My blinds would start shaking. There's some more and a weird potential alien story that I won't get into. But yeah, creepy stuff. Hated that house. When I was around 9 to 10 years old, I remember waking up to see a large shadow stood at the foot of my bed. I was living with my dad at the time. He has a very large 5 floors terrace house built in the 1800s. Every so often there would be an unexplainable event happen, such as footsteps when there's no one there or voices on the night this happened. It was just my dad and I in the house. My sister was staying with my mom at the time. I woke up and noticed the door to my room was wide open. I normally sleep with it closed. I then became aware of a large, around 7 feet tall shadow-like figure watching me from the end of the bed. When the figure noticed me, it seemed to melt into the floor and the door to my room slammed shut. Understandably, I was slightly traumatized by the whole experience. Asked my dad the next day if he was in my room, and he denied any knowledge of the event. He's not the type of person that likes jokes. Green eyes. Lived in Turnquist in MD. Plane went down in the area killing 300. Lighting struck the fuel or something. Well, the house was out of code and electrical was always fritzy. I would go down to fix the power, and these eyes would show up, green floating eyes. Green like Mountain Dew, and all of the eye is green, not just the iris. My dog would not go down there with me to fix the power, and when the power came back up, the eyes would be gone. The eyes never appeared the same place. I lived in a big 1840s colonial house with 3 of my friends for a while. It was set back in 80 acres of state wildlife property, and it was a gorgeous house. The bedrooms were all upstairs and all lined up down the hall. Our third night in the house, right about 30 minutes after we had all sort of called it a night, my doorknob rattled like someone was fiddling with it. Then I heard the door next to mine rattle, and the next, and the next, all the way down the hall one at a time. The next morning, one of my housemates asked why I was messing with the doors, since she had asked the 2 guys in the house and neither of them knew what she was talking about. One night I woke up with an intense urge to get out of bed, like my brain screaming at me to get up. I laid still for a while thinking maybe I had been woken up by a noise, but it was around 3 a.m. and dead quiet. I went into the hallway, and as soon as I walked out into the hall, all of my roommates opened their doors and came out too. We were all woken up, but no one heard anything, and they had the same urgent get up feeling I did. Just shrugged and went back to sleep. Weird things would happen there. Strange objects would show up in the basement or crawl space, like old suitcases or a kid's rocking chair. Once a vase, just random stuff. You would occasionally hear footsteps running down the bedroom hall and down the stairs if you were in the living room below. I could go on. That house was really strange. Never felt threatened, just weird.